Good morning, my fellow friends and adventurers into life beyond codependency. I'm Marshall Berkshire. Welcome to today's episode of Happiness After Codependency. I'm your guide in coming to knowing, loving, and living who you are through restoring self-trust, your innate value, reconnecting you back to your genuine voice, your true voice, and genuine vision. Help you know, love, and live who you are. That's what we're about here. So I'm excited to be here with you today in this episode, which is episode number 4 of Restoring Self-Trust, the principle of your natural completeness. So that's what we're going to be exploring today. Before we do that, I'm going to get this shared out to the community here real quick. The community is where you can find tools, support, and guidance in your journey and coming back to knowing, loving, and living who you are. The link is above on Facebook, below on Facebook. It's above on Facebook, below on YouTube, rather. And the community is governed by a strict set of rules that help us create a safe, secure container so we can each individually navigate our trauma and our healing in a safe way. So make sure you check out the rules link before joining to make sure you understand what the rules are and what's expected of you, and if it's a good fit for you, because not all communities are. And so making sure you're in the right place for your needs and what you need in your journey is critical to your healing and to your well-being. So make sure you check those out. So let's get that shared out now. Let me know in the comments how you guys are doing today. Let's see here. We're going to click a little thingy there. And boom, there we are. So again, good morning. I'm happy to be here with you guys in our adventure today. So episode number 4 of Restoring Self-Trust, the principle of natural completeness. So, that word so. Yeah. In codependency, we tend to seek ourselves through others. This is a practice, a habit that's natural. So, children, especially toddlers and infants, children under the age of 5, tend to seek their sense of self, their sense of safety, their sense of connection through their parents. They interpret the world through the way the parent responds to the world and the way the parent responds to them. And the way that parent responds to them also gives the child a way to interpret themselves. So this is how we internalize our parents' points of view or other people's points of view whom we value, that have some sort of importance or significance in our world at that point in time. We internalize that as a truth about ourselves based on how they're respecting or reacting rather to us, and how they're reacting to the world teaches us how to react to the world as well. This is where we mirror or mimic them. In normal development, or we say healthy development rather, the child begins to go through a process called differentiation. Differentiation means I can determine the difference between me and another object. I can see the separateness, the individuality of it. So I become more and more individuated to myself if I'm differentiating myself from my parents, for instance. That means it's like, oh, my mother likes this and I don't like that. I like this instead. That would be a differentiation. This helps the child naturally become attuned to themselves and to who they are. Help them understand what works for them, what doesn't, what they desire, what they don't, their limits, their capacities, their needs and their wants, and the way those things get met. Codependency, this process of individuation and differentiating ourselves from others and from the world, is hijacked and shut down through the freeze and fawn responses the nervous system has to the sense of being threatened, usually the threat of being abandoned or being harmed in some way. And that individuation response is replaced with the fawning response, which teaches us to mimic and adapt to the expectation of the other person. So we become externally oriented in that individual's perspective. In other words, we see the world through their lens. We understand ourselves through their perspective, but we never really come into contact with our own awareness, our own truth, our own beingness. In other words, our own individuality. This teaches us a false concept of self, that we are intrinsically incomplete and that our value is dependent on our competence, on our ability to please them, to fulfill them, to regulate them, to make them happy with what we do or do not do, with what we have or do not have, and what we be or do not be in their world. This is where our sense of worth becomes wrapped up in what I call transactional value. It's like, my value is determined by the impact I have on other people and what they tell me that is. This is why your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem can do this throughout your day, because it's being completely controlled by these external factors. And this brings us to this principle of natural completeness. So in self-trust, we are orienting towards the legitimacy of our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, our emotions, our awareness, our lived experience, and of our beingness. In codependency, we have a distrust towards these elements. We believe that they are not real, that they are not valid, they are not legitimate, they deserve to be questioned, that we should be questioning them because they don't line up with the external expectation or definition someone else has. That's where we get really, really lost from ourselves. We get trapped. We become mired in trying to make things perfect. We become very anxious and very scared and very insecure because there's no stable access to our sense of self, because it's determined by the thoughts and feeling state of the other person. And coming back to self-trust, this is where we get a chance to really connect back to ourselves. And this happens first again with principle number 1, our innate legitimacy. We are innately legitimate in our feelings, our beingness, our wants, our needs, our limits, our capacities, those concepts. And this opens us up to the next step, which is our natural completeness. See, natural completeness suggests that as we are, we're whole. We don't need to be a particular shape, a particular person, a particular thing. We don't need to do, or be particular things in our world in order to be complete. Instead, completeness is a natural product of who we are, a natural aspect of ourselves. And it's from that completeness we come into contact with the world and interface and interact with it. So when we start to trust in the idea of being complete, we start to experience that completeness. Now here's the trick with this. This is where we often get stuck because we're still externally oriented to some level. This completeness is not going to line up with the other person's expectation. It's not even going to line up with our own, because a lot of times our own expectations of ourselves are not actually ours. They are a conclusion we have created based on the feedback of other people and what we think is wanted or valued by other individuals. So it's programmed. It's not innate. It's not natural. It's not actually a part of who we are. So when we come into this contact with our natural completeness, we're going to feel very different. We're going to start to experience different responses and reactions to people, places, and things in our life, and different responses to ourselves. I'll give you an example of this in my own world. So in my codependency, I had to be perfect at everything. I had to be the know-it-all. I had to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of things, because if I didn't, I was incomplete, thus I was not valuable. Yeah, that used to drive me crazy. But with natural completeness, now it actually acknowledges that my lack of expertise, training, or knowledge in a particular thing means nothing. Because my completeness isn't defined by my knowledge or my expertise or experience. It's defined by my beingness. What that gives me is a lot of peace. Because it's like, man, I don't know anything about that. I don't need to. I can succeed and prosper right here, just as I am. I can grow on the things I know. I can follow what brings me alive in these things. My natural completeness and trusting in that natural completeness brings me back to my joy, back to my playfulness, back to my curiosity. And it engages me in my natural path through life, rather than trying to obtain some sort of status or outcome or position in order to get people to love, like, or need or want me. Because that's what codependency wants. It wants to be needed, it wants to be wanted, it wants to be valued a certain way because it thinks that it makes it valuable and complete. But with natural completeness, we're actually getting really connected with our own shape and what brings us alive and what fulfills ourselves. So as we practice self-trust, it's about connecting back to this natural completeness and starting to learn what it is for us, how it feels in our body, because it's not a mental concept. It's lived here in the body. And then following it and allowing it to teach us. And that's where that self-trust comes in. It's like, I'm willing to trust 5-10% more that I'm naturally complete and see what that brings you. See what that reveals to you. So I got a comment here from Shani. I do remember as a child, I would adopt their likes to meet their expectations and valued and be noticed. Yeah. Because we don't know ourselves. We're defining ourselves by that external expectation in hopes that they'll love us and that they'll keep us. It says how we survived the neglect, the abandonment, the lack of being seen and valued and loved for who we are. So it's a very natural and understandable response. As we move into completeness, we stop doing that habit and we regain that capacity and the energy we invest in that. We bring it back to ourselves. And when we start to experience really being seen, loved, and valued, first from ourselves to ourselves, and the second from others to ourselves, and then us to them, it sobers up our relationships, our friendships, our desires, our expectations of the world and of life. We become much more anchored in what brings us joy and what brings us peace and what protects and cares and nurtures for us, rather than running out into the unknown and trying to, hoping something will work. So this state of natural completeness is what we explore in the self-trust course that starts here in about 2 weeks. It starts January 17th. And I teach you how to start touching into this in the 5-day challenge that starts here this coming Monday. So if you're interested in going deeper on this, learning how to retrieve and foster your innate value, befriend your lived experience and your emotions, how to warm up to self-trust, and how to regulate your nervous system, come join us in the 5-day challenge. Link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube, and it is free. And if you're on the podcast, you're listening there, go to my website at freetheself.com, and it's in the menu at the top. Join us. It's 5 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week, which is January 10th through the 16th. I'm going to give you that training, and let's see what you discover in that. So, my friends, consider today exploring this question. What shifts when you trust just a little bit that you're naturally complete as you are? And let's see what you discover about who you are beyond your codependency and within your self-trust. If you're interested in going in deeper on this, come join us for the 5-day challenge, and also join us in the self-trust course that starts the 17th. Enrollment for that will start next Monday on January 10th. Thank you guys for being here. It's a short training today. Just something I wanted to give some insight on is that we are naturally complete. We're naturally whole. We have been taught to doubt that, to question that, and to seek ourselves through others in order to be pliable, controllable, in order to please other people and their expectations. And we can take that autonomy back, come back into connection with ourselves, occupy the space of our own personal authority and wholeness so that we can make choices in our world that we want to live with, that bring us happiness, joy, and peace. And then build relationships, friendships, and connections with others that respect the same and that value the same things. This is what it means to live beyond codependency, is to live within healthy interdependence with ourselves and with others, which results in that peace, that confidence, that joy that we're all seeking. So there you go. Let me know what you discover in the comments below as you explore that question. And go gently with yourselves today, guys. And I'll see you in our next training.